Um, okay, so we're going to start on our pizza crust dough right now. And I've got everything gathered here. You notice I have everything chopped and sitting off to the side for when we decorate our pizzas. And here I have 2 cups of warm water. Now, you use 1 cup of the hottest tap water you can find and 2.5 cups of flour. But I am tripling the recipe because my son likes deep dish pizza and we really go through the dough. So let me set the camera down here. And I'm going to start out with 2 cups of the warm water, but I'm going to add another cup when we end up putting it in the dough. For now, this is fine. And so it's 1 cup of warm water and 1 tablespoon yeast. Again, tripling the recipe. I need to buy some more yeast soon. And then I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of sugar, and that's just 1 tablespoon per recipe. So 1 tablespoon sugar, 1 tablespoon yeast, 1 cup hot water. We're tripling the recipe, so the measurements are different here. And we're just going to stir this up. And we're going to let it sit for about 5 minutes until it starts to bubble at the top. Not bubbling from my stirring or breaking up the yeast that's a little bit clumped. It's been in my fridge for a while and I'm almost out of the jar. Okay, so we're going to let that sit for about 5 minutes and I'll show you when it gets bubbly what it's going to look like. Okay, as you can see, bubbles have formed here on the top of the glass of the measuring cup of water, and in fact what was a 2-cup measurement has now poofed up to be more than that. We're still going to add that other cup of water, and I've pre-measured 7.5 cups of flour. Now remember, this recipe is tripled. You need 2.5 cups of flour per cup of water. We're just going to pour this right in there, and I'm going to go ahead right now and I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt per recipe, so 3 teaspoons of salt in this case. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of each herb, rosemary, oregano, and basil. And you notice they're all dried this time, even though I just chopped up some fresh basil to go onto the pizza toppings as topping, but I don't want to add any extra moisture into the crust. So they go in dried, along with dried garlic. I'm going to say a generous tablespoon, but it's probably more like 2 tablespoons. And let me get some extra water. And I'm back with the extra water. We're going to add that in. And now I'm just going to start stirring it together. And it is going to go very quickly from wet flour to a dough. Just keep mixing it like this. See how quickly it's thickening up. And then when it becomes hard to turn, and I washed my hands while I was getting the water. Well, I washed them before that too, but I washed them again. And so we're going to just put our spoon to the side and we're going to start mixing the dough around, kneading it with our hands. This is the fun part. If you have kids involved or grandkids involved, as I do, in making the pizza, they love to do this. Or if you don't want them actually putting their hands into your food, you can give them a little piece of dough to knead like Play-Doh while you are mixing up the dough. Now, the key here is that you don't want to overmix the dough, but you don't want to undermix the dough. So look at all that flour that's on the outside. I'm going to press this around a few more times. And when I stop getting all those clumps of flour on the outside, you know that you've mixed it all in. It's still going to be very tacky. I'm going to have to put the camera down so that I can pull it off my hands. Okay, now we've got the dough. It is tacky. My hands have been washed. And you want it soft and tacky. See how it's still pulling up on my hands? It will be less tacky the longer it sits, but also we are going to put some more flour back into it when we need it. For now, we're going to cover it, and if it's in this bowl, then I use the lid. If not, then I usually put a clean dish towel over it, and we're just going to set it on the stove off of a burner, just in the back, and we're going to let it sit until we're ready to roll out the dough. Our dough is risen. Doesn't even resemble the tiny little mound of dough we had before. And I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to show you how to shape a pizza crust. So as soon as I stick my hands in, you can see that the dough starts to fall away. That's just because I'm bursting air bubbles in it. And I'm going to take about a third of this dough. And oh, I wish I dipped my hands in flour before. I wish I dipped my hands in flour before. I'm going to try and not get dough on my bag. That's okay. I have a jar I can put this in. Just get some dough out, or some flour out, because this is an extra sticky dough. It's very humid, and that will affect your dough. So having a very humid day makes the dough extra sticky. And typically, I just stretch this out but we're going to knead it a little bit, make it a little less sticky before I start rolling it out. Look at all that. Look at all that. Okay, this is why you wash your hands before you cook. You don't want... Okay, now I've come back with my hands washed the sticky dough. I have them nice and floured. And I'm going to bring out a little bit more dough to add to this. I didn't have enough. This is a very, very large pan. So even though I'm doing a thin crust, I want it to go all the way to the edges. And we just pat, and I toss some flour in there. So just keep patting. Get it all nice and spread out evenly. Whenever you have a hole like that in the pizza, you just spread a little extra dough over in that area. It'll all get covered up. Yeah. Take a little out of this area, put it over in this one, get a little extra flour, because the more you work with the dough, the stickier it's going to get. You're working the flour into the dough. You also get it to be tougher if you work with it too much. So, I just can't win. This was not a good day to make pizza, apparently. There we go. All right. Now, if I was wanting to win a prize for pizza, I would take a little bit more time on this, and I would make it look a little bit prettier. Right now, I'm just concerned about smoothing out to the edges so that I don't have toppings. And then I'm just going to pat it with my hands a little bit and make sure that it all feels like it's the same thickness. I've got a thin spot over here. As I'm rolling the dough before I put it on, that's to keep all the stickiness inside. So yeah, I've patched that really thin spot. Now pat it again, make sure there's no other thin spots. I have a little thick spot there. I want to bake evenly, so I just rearranged that. Dough is very forgiving. And I'm doing this so that the air releases and I don't end up getting big air bubbles in the crust. But what's going to happen is around this edge, it's going to bubble up and give me a nice crust edge. So let's put this in and we're going to par bake it for about 10 minutes before we decorate it. How to do a thick crust pizza. I'm pouring a little more flour in here. I'm going to cover my hands with it. I decided I'm just going to go ahead and work all this instead of leaving it for my son to do later. I think I'm just being kind because the dough is just so sticky today. So sticky with the humidity. And I have another stoneware pan, but as you can tell, this one is a lot smaller. And like I said, when I say he likes his dough thick, he likes it extremely thick. This is why we do separate pizzas, because he's never happy with the way I like it, and I'm never happy with the way he likes it. Again, more flour. And I'm just pushing this up on the edges to make that nice thick crust that he's going to love. And this is very thick in the center. When we par bake this one, it'll stay in the oven longer than mine will, because it's going to take longer to bake all the way through. And then his crusts are also going to be huge. Surprisingly, he doesn't like stuffed crust. We've tried making those, and neither of us really like that, but he really does like thick crust that I am not too thrilled about. I guess you could view this crust as like it's built-in breadstick. And again, we're going to poke holes so that the center doesn't bubble up, and you can tell the crust is about that thick already, and that's going to be very thick once it heats up a little bit. So trying to get that crust to come outwards so it doesn't fall inwards as it par bakes. And then he and I will both decorate our pizzas separately. We're the only two having pizza for dinner tonight, so we get to do whatever we want to each of them.